So, some pretty startling new data just dropped, and it confirms a trend that's been quietly reshaping American life for decades. Here it is. We're having less sex than ever before. And look, this isn't just about what happens behind closed doors. It's a huge societal shift that sociologists are calling the American sex recession. And today, we're going to break down what that actually means. Okay, so what's the game plan? First up, we're going to hit you with the big headline-grabbing number that's got everyone talking. Then we'll zoom out to see how this trend has been building for decades. We're also going to dig into who exactly this is affecting. The answer might surprise you. And finally, we'll tackle the most important question. Why should any of us care? All right, let's get right into it. The General Social Survey just released its latest findings, and honestly, it's a bombshell.
So, the question on everyone's mind, the one researchers at the Institute for Family Studies really wanted to nail down was simple. Are we, as Americans, actually having less sex? We've all seen the headlines and heard the chatter for years, but this new data gives us a really clear answer.
And the answer? It's a big, resounding yes. The headline number from the 2024 survey is, get this, 37%. That's it. Only 37% of American adults between 18 and 64 are having sex at least once a week. And I really want you to let that sink in. This is a historic low. No, seriously, think about it. Even during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, with all the lockdowns and social distancing, people were still having more weekly sex than they are right now. That is a truly wild milestone to hit. But here's the thing. A number that low doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. To really get what's going on with that 37% number, we have to look back. This is the result of a long, slow slide.
Okay, so this timeline really lays it all out. If you go back to 1990, a pretty solid majority, 55% of adults, were having sex at least weekly. But then you hit the mid-2000s and something starts to shift. A slow, consistent decline kicks in, and it's been dropping ever since, leading us right to where we are today.
So let's just boil this down, right? We've gone from a country where over half of us were intimate on a weekly basis to a country where it's just a little over a third. That is a massive change in how we behave, and it happened in just a few decades. This whole thing has gotten so big that experts have actually given it a name. They call it the sex recession. It's not just a catchy headline. It's the official term sociologists and psychologists use to describe this exact kind of long-term drop in sexual activity across an entire population. Now, whenever this topic comes up, everyone immediately points their finger at young people. And yeah, they're a huge part of the story, for sure. But the data shows this is so much bigger than just one generation. Okay, but let's start with young adults, because this number is a real jaw-dropper. 24%. Almost a quarter of all Americans between 18 and 29 said they had zero sex in the past year. None. And what's just wild here is how fast this happened. If you look back to just 2010, that number was about 12%. So in a little more than a decade, the rate of young adults not having sex at all has literally doubled. That is an incredibly fast shift. But like I said, if you think this is just a Gen Z or millennial problem, you're missing the bigger picture. The report from the Institute for Family Studies makes it crystal clear that the story of the sex recession goes way beyond just one generation. So who's actually caught up in this? Well, the short answer is pretty much everybody under the age of 65. The decline is happening across all sexual orientations. It's happening to people who are married and people who are single. This isn't some niche issue. It's hitting a huge swath of society. Okay, so we've got the what and we've got the who. But the biggest question is, so what? Why does any of this actually matter? Why are researchers so concerned about these numbers? I think this quote from the report really just hits the nail on the head. This isn't some new panic that just popped up. Sociologists have been watching this slide happen for decades, and they've been sounding the alarm. This new data just confirms their biggest fears in a really dramatic way. So just to quickly wrap our heads around the main points. For young adults, sexual inactivity has doubled since 2010. For everyone under 65, there's been a major long-term decline in weekly sex. The only group that really hasn't changed much is people 65 and older, and that's mostly because their reported frequency was already lower to begin with. And at the end of the day, why we should care is because this isn't really just about sex, is it? This data is like a canary in the coal mine for our relationships and social connections. It makes us ask some really tough questions about how we're relating to each other in this modern world.
And all of this leaves us with a really big, kind of haunting question. In a world that's changing so fast, with new technology, new work-life pressures, new social rules, what does the future of human intimacy even look like? There's no simple answer, but this data makes one thing perfectly clear. It's a question we can't afford to ignore anymore.